A black single dad dragged a woman out of a car wreck, unaware she was his late wife's sister and a millionaire. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises before we are forced to call the authorities. The rain hammered down on the cracked pavement like 1,000 desperate fists, relentless and wild. It was a cold, unforgiving downpour that mirrored the storm inside Marcus's own shattered heart, each drop a tiny punctuation mark on his unending sentence of grief and struggle. He stood on the curb, the eviction notice a sodden, crumpled testament to his failure in his trembling hand. His gaze fixed on the front door of the home that was no longer his. It was the same door he had carried his wife, Sarah, through as a bride, the same door he had brought their newborn daughter, Lily, home through, a bundle of impossible, innocent joy wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Now it was just a barrier of painted wood, indifferent and final. The silence that followed the landlord's harsh words was more brutal than the shouting, a cavernous void filled only by the relentless drumming of the rain and the frantic, thudding beat of his own heart. He felt Lily's small hand tighten in his, her tiny form pressing against his leg for warmth and reassurance he did not possess. He had to be strong. For her. He always had to be strong for her. He drew a ragged breath, the cold, damp air biting at his lungs. He was a good man. He was a devoted father. He was utterly and completely broken. The world had become a series of relentless blows ever since Sarah had been taken from them by a sickness that had stolen the light from her eyes and then, cruelly, the very breath from her body. Her loss was a raw, hollow ache in his chest, a constant, low hum of pain that never ceased. After her passing, his job at the garage, the one he'd held for 10 years with steady, skilled hands, vanished in a wave of corporate downsizing. His savings, already ravaged by medical bills that glittered with cruel, incomprehensible numbers, evaporated like morning mist. Now, there was nothing left but the worn clothes on their backs, a rusty, unreliable truck, and the overwhelming, crushing weight of being a single father with no safety net in a world that felt designed to watch him fall. He looked down at Lily, at her wide, trusting eyes that held so much of her mother's light. Her hair was braided in 2 neat plaits, a task his calloused, grease-stained fingers still found clumsy but performed with sacred devotion each morning. In her eyes, he was a hero, a giant, the man who could fix anything. He had never felt smaller. He knelt, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "It's okay, sweet pea. We're going on an adventure." Lily's brow furrowed with the profound seriousness of a 5-year-old. "Is Mommy coming on the adventure?" she asked, her voice a small, pure whisper against the storm. A sob caught in his throat, hot and sharp. He swallowed it down, burying it deep with all the other unshed tears. "Mommy's on her own adventure, remember? In the stars. But she's watching us. She's always watching." He squeezed her hand, his touch gentle despite the roughness of his skin. He would not falter. He would not let his daughter see the sheer terror that was clawing at the edges of his composure. He had a few dollars in his pocket, enough for gas and maybe some hot soup at a diner. After that, he had no idea. There was only the rain, the road, and a desperate, flickering prayer. He was a virtuous man in a state of quiet, dignified desperation. He possessed immense inner strength but no material resources. He was at the very edge of a precipice. He had no way of knowing that the storm that was trying to drown him was the very same storm that was about to deliver his salvation. The old truck groaned in protest as it rumbled down the slick, dark highway, its wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. Marcus drove slowly, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his focus absolute. Lily had finally fallen asleep in her car seat, her small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, a single point of peace in his chaotic world. The rhythmic squeak of the wipers, the hum of the engine, the soft hush of his daughter's breathing, these were the only sounds that mattered. Then, through the sheet of gray rain, he saw it. A flash of metal, a terrible, discordant screech that splintered the night, followed by the sickening thud of impact. A sleek, expensive-looking sedan had hydroplaned, spinning wildly before slamming sideways into a massive oak tree by the side of the road. Steam and smoke began to billow from its crumpled hood. For a heartbeat, Marcus just stared, his mind struggling to process the violent intrusion. Others would drive by. Others would assume help was on the way. But that wasn't who he was. Sarah had always said he had a hero's heart, a compulsion to help that overrode all sense of self-preservation. He pulled the truck over with a sharp, decisive movement. He turned and looked at Lily, still sleeping, an innocent angel oblivious to the horror just a few hundred feet away. He had to help. He had to. He whispered a quick prayer for her safety, for his own, and then he was out of the truck, plunging into the biting cold of the storm. The rain soaked his threadbare jacket instantly, plastering his clothes to his skin, but he barely felt it. Adrenaline surged through him, hot and sharp. As he got closer, he saw the driver's side was horrifically caved in. The woman inside was slumped over the steering wheel, motionless, a cascade of dark hair obscuring her face. A faint, almost imperceptible wisp of smoke was beginning to curl from beneath the dashboard. Fear, cold and metallic, tasted on his tongue. He wrenched at the door handle, but it was jammed tight, the metal grotesquely twisted. He didn't hesitate. He slammed his elbow against the driver's side window. Once, twice. The pain a distant echo. On the third try, the tempered glass shattered, exploding inwards in a shower of glittering fragments. He carefully cleared the remaining shards from the frame with his sleeve, ignoring the sharp stings as slivers of glass embedded themselves in the fabric and his skin. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" He yelled over the pounding rain. There was no response. The smell of gasoline was stronger now, sharp and sickening. Panic began to bubble in his chest, but he forced it down with a will of iron. He reached inside, his hands finding the seatbelt release. It was stuck. He fumbled with it, his fingers clumsy with cold and urgency. With a final, desperate yank, the buckle clicked open. The wisp of smoke from the dashboard thickened, turning from gray to an ominous, oily black. There was no more time. He carefully, gently, maneuvered his arms under the woman's shoulders and knees. She was limp, a dead weight. He gritted his teeth, his muscles straining as he began to pull her through the narrow, jagged opening of the window frame. It was an agonizingly slow process. Her clothes snagged on the twisted metal, and he had to pause, freeing the fabric with painstaking care to avoid injuring her further. He could feel a strange warmth now from the car's interior, a dry heat that had nothing to do with the engine. He pulled harder, his breath coming in ragged, burning gasps. Finally, she was free. He staggered backwards, cradling her against his chest, and ran. He didn't stop until he was 100 feet away, his lungs screaming for air. He gently laid her down on the wet grass, using his own body to shield her from the worst of the rain. It was only then that he allowed himself to look back. The small curl of smoke had erupted into a hungry, orange flame that was beginning to lick at the car's interior. A few seconds later, the entire vehicle was engulfed in a roaring inferno that lit up the dark, wet night with a terrifying, beautiful violence. He had made it just in time. He turned back to the woman, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He brushed the wet hair from her face. In the flickering, hellish light of the fire, he saw her features, pale, elegant, and strangely, achingly familiar, though he couldn't place why. He took off his own soaked jacket, the only warm thing he owned, and tucked it carefully around her. He saw her purse lying on the grass nearby, thrown from the car by the impact. He picked it up, opening it only to find an ID to give the paramedics. He saw the name, Amelia Davenport, and glanced past the thick wads of cash and platinum credit cards without a second thought. That was not his concern. His concern was the human being lying fragile and unconscious before him. As he did, something small and metallic slipped from his own pocket, a tiny, worn silver teddy bear charm from his keychain, a gift from Lily. It fell unnoticed into the wet grass beside the woman. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, a promise of help arriving. He knew he should stay, give a statement. But he looked back toward his truck where his sleeping daughter waited. He couldn't involve her in this. He couldn't face the questions, the scrutiny, the inevitable judgment of his appearance, his poverty. He had done what he had to do. That was enough. He gave the unconscious woman one last look, a silent prayer for her recovery, and then he vanished back into the shadows and the storm, a quiet hero melting back into the desperation of his own life. He was gone. Amelia woke to the sterile silence of a hospital room, a silence broken only by the soft, rhythmic beep of a machine beside her bed. A dull, throbbing pain radiated from her side, and her head felt heavy, wrapped in a thick fog of confusion. The last thing she remembered was the rain, the terrifying loss of control, the world spinning into a blur of green and gray. She tried to sit up, but a sharp gasp of pain pinned her back against the crisp, white sheets. A doctor entered, his face kind but professional. He explained what had happened, the crash, the fire, the miraculous rescue. "You're incredibly lucky, Ms. Davenport," he said, his voice calm. "The car was completely destroyed. If someone hadn't pulled you out, well, it's a miracle, a miracle." The word echoed in the quiet room. She had been saved. By a stranger. A faceless, nameless hero who had vanished into the night. The police had no witnesses, no one to credit. There was just the report from the paramedics who had arrived to find her lying on the grass, wrapped in a man's worn, threadbare work jacket. The jacket itself, now sitting in an evidence bag on the table beside her, was all that remained of him. It was old, frayed at the cuffs, and smelled faintly of rain, motor oil, and something else, a faint, lingering scent of quiet dignity. As the fog in her mind began to clear, fractured memories surfaced. Not visuals, but sensations. The feeling of strong, steady arms lifting her. A voice, low and urgent, but gentle. "I've got you. You're safe," the feeling of being shielded from the cold rain. It was a profound sense of safety she hadn't felt in years, not since Sarah. Grief, sharp and familiar, pierced through the physical pain. Her sister. The wound of their estrangement was a scar she traced daily, a constant reminder of her own foolish pride. They hadn't spoken in the 2 years before Sarah's death, a stupid argument over ambition and family that had festered into a chasm of silence. By the time Amelia had built her tech empire, by the time she was ready to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, it was too late. Sarah was gone. Now, Amelia had everything she had ever worked for, a cavernous mansion filled with gleaming marble and ornate art, a portfolio that could alter the fate of small nations, a name that commanded respect in any boardroom. And she was utterly, desperately alone. Her wealth was a fortress of solitude, her success a monument to what she had lost. This rescue, this selfless act performed by a ghost in the storm, struck a chord deep within her soul. In her world, every action was transactional, every kindness a calculated investment. But this was pure, unsolicited, an act of profound humanity from a person who had nothing to gain. It was a flicker of light in her own personal darkness, a sign that the goodness she had once believed in, the goodness that had shone so brightly in her sister, still existed. She had to find him. It became an obsession, a new purpose that animated her weary spirit. She hired the best private investigators her money could buy. "Find the man who saved me," she commanded, her voice unwavering. The only clues were the jacket and a vague geographic area. It was next to nothing. Days turned into a week. Her investigators came up empty. They found nothing. But Amelia was relentless. As she recovered, she examined the evidence bag herself. She ran her fingers over the worn fabric of the jacket. And then she saw it tucked into a fold of the wet grass clippings and debris at the bottom of the bag. A tiny, silver teddy bear charm, its features smoothed down by time and touch. It was small, insignificant, yet it felt sacred. A tangible piece of her savior. She clutched the small coin of metal in her hand, a lifeline. This was her only lead, but it was enough. It was a symbol. A promise. A renewed purpose began to solidify in her heart, displacing the grief and cynicism that had taken root there for so long. She would find this man, and she would repay a debt that felt larger than her entire fortune. It was a quest not just to thank him, but to reconnect with the part of herself she had lost with her sister. The search was on. The consequence of Marcus's heroism was, in the cruel irony that governed his life, another setback. The physical exertion of the rescue had aggravated an old back injury from his garage days. A sharp, searing pain now shot down his spine with any sudden movement, making the physically demanding gig work he relied on nearly impossible. The few dollars he had were gone, spent on Lily's cough medicine and a few days' worth of instant noodles and bread. Desperation was no longer a quiet hum in the background. It was a roaring in his ears. He and Lily were now living in his truck, parked in the far corner of a dimly lit supermarket parking lot, trying to be as invisible as possible. Each night was a battle against the biting cold, Marcus giving Lily the one thick blanket they owned while he shivered in the driver's seat. His worn jacket now gone, left behind in the chaos of that rainy night. Yet, even in this hollowed-out existence, his devotion to Lily remained an unwavering, steady flame. He would spend hours with her in the warmth of the public library, reading her stories and helping her practice her letters. He washed their clothes in public restrooms, his movements precise and dignified, as if he were performing a sacred ritual. He never complained. He never let his despair show on his face when Lily was watching. His love for her was the only thing holding the shattered pieces of his world together. Meanwhile, Amelia's investigators, armed with the new clue of the teddy bear charm, finally had a breakthrough. The charm was a limited edition promotional item from a local family-owned garage that had gone out of business a year ago. It was the same garage where Marcus had worked for a decade. Cross-referencing employee records with vehicle registrations in the area of the crash, they narrowed the list down to one name: Marcus Thorne. The report landed on Amelia's polished mahogany desk with a soft thud. It contained his photo, his last known address, the one he'd just been evicted from, and a brief, heartbreaking summary of his life. Widower, single father, recently unemployed. The name of his late wife was listed: Sarah Thorne. Amelia's breath hitched. Her vision blurred. Sarah. Her Sarah. Couldn't be. The world tilted on its axis, the sterile silence of her office suddenly deafening. The man who had saved her, the stranger whose selfless act had reawakened her heart, was her sister's husband. The child he was raising, the little girl mentioned in the report, was her niece, Lily, a name Sarah had whispered to her on the phone years ago, full of hope and excitement, before their foolish pride had torn them apart. A seismic shockwave of emotion coursed through Amelia: grief, regret, and a fierce, undeniable surge of awe. Her sister's husband. Of course, it was him. Only a man loved by Sarah could possess such inherent, quiet goodness. The pieces clicked into place with a sense of cosmic, heartbreaking rightness. This wasn't just a debt to be repaid. This was a second chance. A chance to connect with the only family she had left. A chance to honor Sarah's memory by protecting the two people she had loved most in the world. She now understood her purpose with a clarity that was both cathartic and terrifying. She would watch over them. She would protect them. But she couldn't just sweep in with her wealth. That would feel crass, a hollow transaction. He was a proud, dignified man. She had to understand him, to see his life before she revealed herself. From the sleek, tinted window sanctuary of her car, she began her quiet observation. She found his truck in the parking lot. She saw him with Lily, saw the way his entire being softened when he looked at his daughter. She saw him count out his last few coins to buy Lily a hot chocolate while he drank nothing. She saw the pain that flickered in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Each observation was a knife twist of guilt and a surge of profound admiration. Her grief was no longer just a hollow ache, it was a powerful driving force. The secret intervention began. One morning, Marcus woke up to find an envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. Inside was enough cash to rent a small, clean apartment for 3 months with no note, no explanation. He stared at the crisp bills with disbelief, his heart pounding. He thought it was a mistake, a miracle, a test from God. He accepted it with a trembling, grateful prayer. A few days later, a large box of groceries appeared on their new doorstep, filled with fresh fruit, vegetables, and Lily's favorite snacks. Then his truck, which had been rattling and coughing, suddenly started running smoothly. He checked under the hood to find a new battery and alternator installed with a professional skill he recognized instantly. He was bewildered, suspicious, but overwhelmingly grateful. He didn't know who his anonymous angel was, but their quiet, invisible kindness was a lifeline. It gave him breathing room. It gave him hope. For Amelia, each anonymous act was a balm on her own wounded soul. She was not just giving him money, she was giving him security, giving him dignity, weaving a net of safety around the family she had almost lost forever. She was getting closer, circling the moment when she would finally step out of the shadows. The time had come to stop being a ghost. Amelia knew she couldn't hide forever, she needed to meet him, to meet her niece. She couldn't reveal the whole truth at once, it was too much, too overwhelming. She needed to forge a connection first, one based on something other than a shared tragedy and her vast fortune. She learned from her observations that Marcus took Lily to the same small park every sunny afternoon. It was there she decided to orchestrate their chance meeting. She dressed down, wearing simple jeans and a soft sweater, leaving her expensive watch and designer handbag behind. She wanted to appear ordinary, approachable. She sat on a park bench, a book open on her lap, her heart thudding a nervous rhythm against her ribs. Soon she saw them. Marcus was pushing Lily on the swings, a genuine, unguarded smile on his face. The sound of his daughter's delighted laughter drifted across the park, a melody of pure joy. Amelia watched them, a tender, painful lump forming in her throat. This was Sarah's legacy, this beautiful, innocent love. Lily looked so much like Sarah had as a child. The same mischievous sparkle in her eyes, the same spray of freckles across her nose. After a while, Lily ran off towards the sandbox, and Marcus sat on a nearby bench, his posture weary but content. This was her chance. She stood up and walked over, her steps feeling both heavy and light. "Excuse me," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm new to the area. This is a lovely park." Marcus looked up, and for a second, his eyes registered a faint flicker of recognition, the echo of a memory from a rainy night. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He saw only a polite stranger. "It is," he agreed, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. "My daughter loves it here. She's adorable," Amelia said, her gaze drifting towards the sandbox where Lily was diligently building a castle. As she looked at the little girl, she noticed something that made her heart stop. Dangling from Lily's wrist was a small, makeshift bracelet made of colorful yarn, and attached to it was a tiny, worn silver teddy bear. Her teddy bear. The one from the crash. Marcus followed her gaze. "Ah, that's her lucky charm," he explained with a soft chuckle. "She found it in the grass a while back. Insists it brings her good luck." Amelia felt a wave of dizziness. Lily had found the charm. The very symbol of her quest was now a treasured trinket for her niece. The universe was not just nudging them together, it was shouting. At that moment, Lily came running over, her face smudged with sand. "Daddy, look. I made a tower for Mommy in heaven." She held up a fistful of dandelions. Then she saw Amelia, and her eyes widened as they fixed on the delicate silver chain around Amelia's neck. Amelia had, on instinct, put the twin to Lily's charm, one she had custom-made on a necklace for herself. Lily pointed a small, sandy finger. "You have a lucky bear too," she exclaimed. Amelia's breath caught. She knelt down, so she was at eye level with the little girl. "I do," she whispered, her voice thick with unspoken emotion. "It's very special to me." She looked from Lily's innocent, curious face to Marcus's kind, confused one. This was the moment. The beginning. An undeniable connection had been forged not by wealth or revelation but by a child's wonder and a shared, symbolic trinket. A quiet bond had begun to form, woven from threads of coincidence that felt more like destiny. A tentative friendship blossomed from that first meeting in the park. Amelia, introducing herself simply as Amy, became a regular presence in their lives. She never hinted at her wealth or their shared history. She was just a kind woman who seemed to enjoy their company, who listened with an intensity that made Marcus feel truly seen for the first time in years. She would bring coffee for him and a juice box for Lily. Small gestures that felt immense. They talked for hours on those park benches, their conversations circling the safe territories of daily life, but always with an undercurrent of something deeper, a shared melancholy they both recognized but didn't name. One evening, after a particularly long day where Marcus had been turned down for another job, Amelia found him looking more haunted than usual. On a brave impulse, he invited her back to their small apartment for dinner. "It's just leftovers," he said, a flush of embarrassment on his cheeks. "But it's hot. I'd love that," Amelia replied, her voice gentle, her heart aching with the sincerity of his offer. The apartment was sparse but immaculately clean. A framed photo of Sarah sat on the small mantelpiece, her smile radiant and full of life. Amelia's gaze was drawn to it, a physical blow. She felt a tremor go through her. It was here, in this quiet, safe, dimly lit space, that the walls they had both built began to crumble. As Lily slept soundly in her small room, Marcus began to talk. He spoke of Sarah not as a tragedy but as the vibrant, loving center of his universe. He talked about her laugh, her stubbornness, her unwavering belief in him. His voice cracked as he described their last days together, the feeling of helplessness as he watched the woman he loved fade away. I miss my friend," he finished, his voice a raw whisper. A single tear traced a path down his cheek, and he didn't bother to wipe it away. Throughout his vulnerable monologue, Amelia listened, her eyes steady and unwavering. She didn't offer empty platitudes or cheap comforts. She simply sat with him in his grief, her presence a silent testament of understanding. She stood up, went to the small kitchen, and made him a cup of tea, her movements slow and deliberate. It was a simple, grounding gesture. She placed the warm mug in his hands. His fingers brushed against hers, a brief, startling touch of warmth. "Thank you," he murmured, looking at her with eyes full of raw, unguarded pain. It was her turn. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she finally let the truth surface. Her name was Sarah, Amelia began, her voice trembling slightly. My sister. We had a fight years ago. A stupid fight. I was so focused on my career, on building something. I let years go by. I always thought there would be more time. The confession spilled out of her, the years of guilt and regret pouring into the quiet space between them. I never got to say I was sorry. I never got to meet you or Lily. By the time I realized what truly mattered, she was gone. Marcus stared at her, his expression shifting from confusion to stunned disbelief, and finally to a profound, dawning recognition. Amy. Amelia. The name on the ID in the purse. The familiarity of her face. It all crashed down on him at once. He was sitting with his late wife's sister. He was sitting with the woman he had pulled from the burning car. The accident, he breathed, the words barely audible. That was you, Amelia nodded, tears now glistening in her eyes. You saved my life, Marcus. They sat in the heavy silence, the air thick with the weight of unspoken years, shared loss, and a miracle of convergence. They were not two strangers anymore. They were two halves of a broken heart connected by the love and memory of one extraordinary woman. A sacred, unbreakable bond had been forged in the crucible of their shared grief. The confession was complete. The quiet peace of their new reality was shattered a week later. Lily woke in the middle of the night with a frighteningly high fever, her small body trembling with violent chills. She was delirious, her breathing shallow and ragged. Panic, cold and absolute, seized Marcus. He bundled her into every blanket he could find and raced to the nearest and best medical facility in the city, the gleaming, stately Harrison Memorial Hospital, a place he knew he could never afford, but his daughter's life was all that mattered. In the brightly lit, sterile silence of the emergency room, his desperation felt magnified. He didn't have insurance. He had the cash Amelia had anonymously given him, but he knew it wouldn't be enough to cover a single night in a place like this. While doctors whisked Lily away for treatment, Marcus was left in the waiting room to deal with the inevitable bureaucracy. A woman with a severe, immaculately coiffed helmet of hair and a clipboard approached him. Her name tag read Mrs. Albright, financial administrator, her eyes, cold and assessing, swept over his worn jeans and faded hoodie with open disdain. Mr. Thorne, she began, her voice crisp and devoid of any warmth. We require a deposit for treatment. And proof of insurance. Marcus's heart sank. I don't have insurance, he stammered, but I can pay something. Please, my daughter is so sick. Mrs. Albright's lips thinned into a cruel line. She was the personification of elitism and impatience. Something will not be sufficient, she sniffed, her voice rising just enough for others in the hushed waiting room to hear. This is a top-tier medical facility, not a charity clinic. We have procedures. The public humiliation began. She spoke loudly, her words sharp and cutting, questioning his ability to provide for his child, implying he was negligent. People started to stare, their faces a mixture of pity and judgment. Marcus felt his face flush with shame, but he held his ground, his voice quiet but steady. I will pay whatever it costs. Just please, help my daughter. We can't render services without a guarantee of payment, she declared, her tone now openly hostile. Perhaps a city hospital would be more suited to your circumstances. If you cannot provide for her medical needs, I may be forced to make a call to Child Protective Services. The threat hung in the air, vile and suffocating. Marcus froze, the words hitting him like a physical blow. His worst fear. Losing Lily. He felt dizzy, the room tilting, his quiet dignity finally beginning to splinter under the relentless, cruel assault. He was overwhelmed. Just as a sob of pure despair threatened to break through his composure, a new voice cut through the tension, calm but commanding. That will be quite enough, Mrs. Albright. Every head turned. Amelia Davenport stood at the entrance to the waiting room, her presence filling the space. She wasn't dressed as Amy from the park. She was wearing an impeccably tailored suit, her expression one of cold, controlled fury. She looked powerful. She looked regal. She was the hidden savior making her dramatic entrance. She strode across the polished marble floor, her heels clicking with sharp authority. She didn't look at Mrs. Albright. She went straight to Marcus, placing a firm, reassuring hand on his arm. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw an unwavering promise of protection. Then she turned her gaze to the stunned administrator. Her voice was low, but it echoed with undeniable power in the suddenly silent room. For your information, Mrs. Albright, Amelia began, her words precise and deadly, this man, Marcus Thorne, is a hero. Weeks ago, he pulled me from a burning car with no thought for his own safety. He saved my life. A collective gasp went through the room. Amelia continued, her voice rising with righteous anger. And this little girl you are threatening? She is my niece. This man you are humiliating? He is my family. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. And this hospital you seem to think you run? I am the chair of the board of directors. I own it. The revelation hit the room like a lightning strike. Mrs. Albright's face went from smug cruelty to a mask of pale, horrified shock. She began to stammer, to apologize, but Amelia held up a hand, silencing her instantly. You are fired, Amelia stated, the words clean and final. Your bigotry and your cruelty have no place here. Pack your things. She then turned her back on the speechless woman, her focus entirely on Marcus. From this moment on, she said, her voice softening with profound tenderness, you and Lily will have the best of everything. You will never have to worry about money or bills or menial cruelties like this ever again. You are safe. The power dynamic had been completely and irrevocably reversed. The sufferer had been saved, his virtue publicly championed, and the antagonist was left shattered and speechless. Salvation was here. The resolution was swift and absolute. With a single phone call, Amelia had Lily moved to a private suite on the VIP floor, attended by the city's top pediatric specialist. The diagnosis was a severe but treatable case of pneumonia, and with the best care, she would make a full recovery. Marcus sat by Lily's bedside, holding her small, sleeping hand, the beeping of the machines no longer a sound of fear but a comforting rhythm of healing. Amelia sat with him, a quiet, steady presence in the softly lit room. The grand, public salvation had given way to a quiet, private fulfillment. The weight of years of struggle lifted from Marcus's shoulders, a physical release so profound it left him feeling lightheaded. When he tried to thank her, his voice thick with emotion, Amelia simply shook her head. Don't thank me, Marcus, she said softly. This isn't charity. This is family. This is what Sarah would have wanted. For us to find each other. She reached into her purse and pulled out a set of keys, placing them gently in his free hand. I bought a house today, she said. It's near the park. It has a big yard for Lily to play in. It's our house. Marcus looked from the keys to her face, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was too much to comprehend. A home, security, a future free from the gnawing anxiety of poverty. It was the life he had dreamed of giving his daughter, a life he thought had died with Sarah. Later that week, once Lily was on the mend, Amelia took him to the house. It wasn't a cavernous mansion like her own, but a beautiful, warm, stately home filled with golden light. It was already furnished, with a room painted Lily's favorite shade of yellow, filled with toys and books. Standing in the sun-drenched living room, surrounded by a security he hadn't felt in his entire adult life, Marcus was finally overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. Amelia. Why? He asked, his voice raw. You don't owe me this. Amelia stepped closer, her expression tender. You saved me, Marcus. Not just from the fire. For years I've been living in a world of shadows, haunted by my regret. I had everything, and I had nothing. Seeing your goodness, your selfless heart, the incredible love you have for Lily, you showed me what truly matters. You saved me from myself. She reached out, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw. It was a gesture of profound intimacy, a connection that transcended gratitude. Sarah knew, she whispered. She knew you were the purest soul she had ever met. And I am beginning to believe that our shared grief wasn't meant to be an ending. Maybe it was meant to be a beginning. For us, in that moment, surrounded by the promise of a new life, a new love bloomed, born from the ashes of loss. It was a quiet, undeniable love built on a foundation of shared sorrow, mutual rescue, and a profound, unwavering respect. His despair had been replaced with hope. Her loneliness had been replaced with connection. They had both found their way home. 1 year later, the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across a lush green backyard. Laughter, bright and carefree, echoed in the warm air. Lily, now a healthy, vibrant 6-year-old, chased butterflies across the lawn, her yellow dress a blur of motion. Marcus watched her from the porch swing, a look of deep, peaceful contentment on his face. He was no longer the gaunt, haunted man from the parking lot. His shoulders were relaxed, his smile easy and frequent. He was running a non-profit community auto shop funded by Amelia that provided free car repairs for single parents and low-income families, his skills now a source of pride and purpose, not just survival. The front door opened with a soft click and Amelia stepped out onto the porch carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. She had changed too. The commanding, almost brittle aura of the CEO had softened, replaced by a gentle warmth. She handed a glass to Marcus and sat beside him on the swing, their bodies settling together with a familiar, easy grace. She slipped her hand into his, their fingers intertwining naturally. They didn't need to speak. They simply watched their daughter, their niece, the living embodiment of their shared love and their second chance. The ghosts of the past had not vanished, but they were no longer haunting specters. They were gentle presences, memories of Sarah that they honored by living fully, by loving deeply, by building this beautiful, improbable family. The worn silver teddy bear charm now hung from a rearview mirror in their shared car, a constant reminder of the storm that had, against all odds, led them to this perfect, sun-drenched peace. They had found security, love, and a happily ever after that was more profound and more cathartic than either of them had ever dared to imagine. They were whole. This story is a testament to the idea that the purest acts of kindness are those performed with no expectation of reward. It is a fable of quiet heroism and unexpected salvation, showing how one selfless moment can ripple outwards, healing old wounds and forging new destinies. Marcus's unwavering virtue in the face of unbearable hardship and Amelia's journey from grief-stricken loneliness to becoming an agent of healing remind us that family is not just about blood, but about the bonds we choose to build from shared love and mutual respect. In a world that often feels transactional, their story champions the profound power of unconditional human connection. If this story touched your heart and reaffirmed your faith in the goodness of people, please let us know. These tales are designed to be a light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the depths of despair, a miracle might be waiting just around the corner, often in the form of a stranger who is destined to become family. We believe that stories of hope, love, and redemption are more important now than ever. We invite you to join our community of viewers who cherish these soul-stirring narratives. Please like this video, share it with someone who might need a lift to their spirits, and subscribe to Soulful Love Tales for more inspiring stories that celebrate the triumph of the human heart. We'll see you in the next one.